My daughter-in-law slid a nursing home brochure across the restaurant table like she was doing me a favor. Smiling elderly people in cardigans, puzzle tables, a nurse pushing a wheelchair through a sunlit hallway. She had a power of attorney form underneath it, and a property transfer document with my address already typed in. 5 minutes later, I made one phone call, and everything she thought she owned started disappearing. My name is Gerald Holt. I'm 64 years old. I spent 30 years as an electrical contractor, built my savings one job at a time, and I live in a small house on Garfield Street that most people would drive past without a second look. I drive a truck that is older than some of my neighbors' kids. I use coupons at the grocery store. I do my own repairs. And I own 51% of a construction company currently valued at just over $600 million. Nobody in my family knew that last part. That was the whole point. And it is exactly why when my daughter-in-law Paulette decided to make her move, she did not see what was coming until it was already over. I want to tell you how that night happened and what came after. 25 years ago, I was 39 years old, and I had spent the better part of my adult life working job sites, saving every dollar I could, and watching a company called Holt Construction slowly bleed out. It had started with my old business partner's family. Decent people once, but bad decisions had piled up. Gambling debts, contracts that went sideways, a payroll they could not meet 2 months running. The company was weeks away from folding when I sat down with their attorney and offered to buy in. I used everything I had saved, every single dollar, bought a 51% controlling stake and signed the papers on a Tuesday afternoon. My wife Margaret squeezed my hand when I told her that night. She did not ask if I was sure. She just said, "You have good instincts. Trust them." Margaret was right, as she usually was. Over the next 2 decades, Holt Construction grew steadily, not flashy, not the kind of company that made the news, but solid, reliable, profitable. I stayed in the background by design. I attended board meetings through a video call from my attorney Stuart Rafferty's office, and I approved or declined major decisions through Stuart as my intermediary. As far as anyone inside the company was concerned, I was a silent partner with a name that happened to match the company's, and no face to attach to it. I kept it that way for a reason. Margaret and I had talked about it many times. Our son Randall was sharp, driven, good with people. We wanted him to earn his place in the world, not coast on money he had never worked for. So when the board eventually hired Randall as CEO in his early 30s, he believed he had gotten there on his own. And mostly he had. I was proud of him for that. What I did not anticipate was Paulette. Randall met her about 6 years before any of this happened. She was polished, well-dressed, and she had a very clear picture of what kind of life she intended to have. When she found out that Randall's father lived in a small house on Garfield Street and drove a beat-up truck and showed up to holiday dinners in work boots, she drew her conclusions fast. I was tolerated, seated at the end of the table, handed whatever wine was left after everyone else had poured. Her parents, Floyd and Nadine Drummond, were the same way. Floyd at 70 still acted like a man running things, though what exactly he ran had never been entirely clear to me. Nadine was the kind of woman who compliments your home while looking for things to criticize. I sat through all of it without a word. I'm not a man who needs to win every room. I just watch. I have always been a better observer than a talker, and patience has never been something I had to work at. About 18 months before the dinner, Stuart called me with something worth paying attention to. Paulette had started involving herself in vendor conversations she had no business role in, nothing official. Just presence, questions, suggestions dropped in the right ears. A few months after that, Stuart flagged something more specific. 3 subcontracts over the previous year had been routed to a small construction outfit called Drummond Building Group, Floyd Drummond's company. The connection was not listed anywhere in the paperwork. It had been structured to stay quiet. I told Stuart to keep watching and say nothing. Not yet. Then the riverfront project started, and everything accelerated. Holt Construction had identified a major development opportunity along the river. Mixed use, high margin, the kind of project that would define a company's decade. Paulette had pushed hard for it internally, which told me she had a stake in seeing it succeed. The problem, according to every internal memo Stuart forwarded me, was one parcel of land sitting exactly where the main access road needed to go. The owner, as described in those memos, was a stubborn old man who would not return calls and had no interest in selling. That stubborn old man was me. The house on Garfield Street, my house. The one I had lived in for 27 years, where Margaret and I had raised Randall, where I still had her reading chair in the corner of the front room because I was not ready to move it. Paulette did not know it was my house. Randall did not know. Nobody inside that company knew that the property they were quietly cursing in planning meetings belonged to the man they had been seating in the kitchen at Christmas. I let it run a little longer than I had to. I needed to see what she would actually do when she believed she had no opposition. The dinner invitation came on a Thursday. Paulette called, not Randall, which told me everything before she said a single word. She used her warm voice, the one she kept for situations where she needed something, said they wanted to take me out, catch up, have a proper family dinner. Her parents would be joining us. She had already picked the restaurant. I said, sure, sounds nice. What time? She chose a place downtown. Linen tablecloths, low lighting, the kind of menu where nothing has a price next to it because the people who eat there are not supposed to need to check. I put on my best shirt, the one without paint on the collar, and drove my truck to the valet. The kid who took my keys did not quite hide his expression. I tipped him anyway. Floyd and Nadine Drummond were already at the table when I walked in. Floyd stood, extended his hand, gave me the firm grip that men like him use to establish something before a word is spoken. Nadine smiled and said it was so good to see me. The way people say things they do not mean but have practiced enough that it comes out smooth. Randall was there too, sitting with his hands flat on the table, not quite meeting my eyes. That told me he knew something was planned and had not found the spine to push back against it. We talked about nothing for about 20 minutes. The weather had turned cold early this year. The riverfront development was going to be something special for the city. Floyd had opinions about interest rates that nobody had asked for. Nadine said the bread was excellent. I ate my food and listened and waited. After the plates were cleared, Paulette reached into the bag beside her chair and set a folder on the table. She did it slowly, deliberately, the way someone does when they have rehearsed the gesture. She folded her hands on top of it and looked at me with an expression she probably thought read as compassion. "Gerald," she said, "we've been talking as a family, and we're worried about you." I nodded, said nothing. She opened the folder. On top was a brochure for a place called Sunset Gardens, assisted living community. Private rooms, a full calendar of activities, compassionate professional care around the clock. There were photographs of elderly people doing watercolor painting and playing cards in a bright common room. Everyone in the photos was smiling in that particular way. People smile when someone is pointing a camera at them and they know the picture's going into a brochure. Underneath the brochure was a power of attorney form. Beneath that, a property transfer document. My address was already typed into the appropriate line. And under that, a guardianship application. She had done her homework. I will give her that. Floyd leaned forward, his thick hands folded on the table, the way a man folds his hands when he wants to look reasonable. "We've been quietly covering some of your property expenses, Gerald. Taxes, upkeep. It adds up over time. And frankly, with the riverfront project the company is working on, that location you're sitting on is worth a lot more than people might realize." He paused, letting that settle. "A sale would cover your care costs and leave you with a comfortable cushion, a real cushion. The facility is genuinely lovely," Nadine added. "You'd have your own space, people around. You wouldn't be alone in that house." Paulette tapped the power of attorney form with one finger. "This just lets us handle the paperwork on your behalf. You wouldn't have to deal with any of it. We take care of everything." I looked at the brochure for a moment. I looked at the forms. I looked at Randall, who was studying his water glass like it held some kind of answer. Then I looked around the table at 4 people who believed they had this completely figured out. "This is a lot to take in," I said. I kept my voice even and a little slow, the way they expected me to sound. "Can I have a few days to look everything over before I decide anything?" Paulette's expression shifted just slightly, the way it does when someone expected more resistance and is recalibrating. But she recovered fast. "Of course," she said. "We just want what's best for you, Gerald. Take the time you need." I picked up the Sunset Gardens brochure and folded it and put it in my jacket pocket. Told them dinner was very nice. Shook Floyd's hand again, gave Nadine a polite nod, hugged Randall, who hugged me back a little too tightly, which was the closest he came all evening to saying he was sorry. Then I walked out to the valet, tipped the kid again, and sat in my truck for a few minutes before I started the engine. I was not angry. I want to be clear about that. Anger is a loud emotion, and loud emotions make you sloppy. What I felt sitting in that parking lot was something quieter and more useful. I felt certain about what had just happened, certain about what was going to happen next, and certain that Paulette Drummond Calloway had just made the last significant mistake of her professional life. I pulled out my phone and called Stuart Rafferty. He picked up on the second ring. "They made their move," I said. "I figured." He said, "How bad? Power of attorney, property transfer, guardianship application." Her parents were there as witnesses. Stuart was quiet for a second. "What do you need?" "2 things," I said. "First, I need a full audit on every contract Floyd Drummond's company has touched in the last 2 years. Everyone. Second, I need you to draft a property acquisition agreement. Make it look completely legitimate, like I've decided to cooperate. Send it to Paulette for her signature. Don't explain it. Just say I had my attorney prepare it to simplify the process." And when she signs it, Stuart said, she's acknowledging the conflict of interest in writing. That's the idea, I said. Let's see how carefully she reads. Stuart called me 10 days later. I had been going about my normal routine in the meantime. Fixed a faulty outlet in the back bedroom, picked up groceries, sat in Margaret's reading chair a couple of evenings with a cup of coffee and the radio on low. From the outside, nothing had changed. That was exactly how I wanted it to look. The audit is done, Stuart said. It's worse than we thought. He walked me through it. Over the past 22 months, 4 subcontracts had been routed to Drummond Building Group. Not 3 like we had initially suspected, 4. The routing had been done through a small procurement adjustment that on paper looked like a standard vendor substitution. The kind of thing that could be explained away as an administrative decision if nobody looked closely. But when you put all 4 together and trace the timing against Paulette's internal communications, the pattern was not explainable. She had steered work worth just over $1.4 million to her father's company without disclosing the family relationship to the board. Not once. Is it documented? I asked. Everything. Stuart said, contracts, email threads, payment records. I also pulled the vendor approval forms. Her signature is on 2 of them. I told him to secure all of it and prepare a full presentation for the board. Then I asked about the acquisition agreement he had sent to Paulette. He laughed, just once, short and dry. She signed it the same afternoon she received it. Emailed it back within 4 hours. Did not change a single word. That did not surprise me. Paulette was smart in a lot of ways, but she was the kind of smart that comes with blind spots. She was so confident she had already won that she had stopped paying attention to the details. The document Stuart had sent her was written in plain, straightforward language, not buried in legal complexity, just clear enough that a careful reader would have caught it. The signature line she had signed was not an agreement to proceed with a property purchase. It was a written acknowledgement that she had initiated and facilitated a transaction involving a property connected to a company project, and that she had done so on behalf of a party with an undisclosed financial interest in the outcome. She had signed a document that proved her own conflict of interest in her own handwriting, on her own initiative. I told Stuart to add it to the board presentation materials. When do you want to schedule the meeting? He asked. Monday morning, I said, 9 o'clock, full board attendance required, and Stuart, one more thing. Activate Clause 17 of the shareholder agreement tonight. I want a freeze on all company assets pending emergency board review before anyone walks into that building Monday morning. There was a pause on his end. Clause 17 was a provision I had negotiated into the original shareholder agreement 25 years ago. It allowed the majority shareholder to initiate an immediate freeze on company transactions in the event of suspected financial misconduct pending a full board review. It had never been used. I had hoped it never would be. Consider it done, Stuart said. The board will have their meeting notices within the hour. I hung up and sat quietly for a while outside. The street was the same as always. A neighbor walking his dog. Somebody's kid riding a bicycle on the sidewalk. The ordinary texture of a Saturday evening in a neighborhood that nobody would ever put in a magazine. I went to the closet and took out my good suit, the charcoal one, hung it on the door so it would be ready. Monday morning arrived cold and clear. Stuart met me in the lobby of Holt Construction Headquarters at 8:45. The building was a 12-story glass tower downtown, built with profits from projects I had approved over the years. I had walked past it plenty of times. I had never walked through the front door in person. Stuart shook my hand and handed me a coffee. They're all here, he said. Every board member. And Gerald, they've been wanting to meet you for a long time. We rode the elevator to the top floor. The boardroom had floor-to-ceiling windows facing the river. A long conference table, leather chairs, the kind of room designed to make whoever sits at the head of it feel like their decisions matter. 10 board members rose when I walked in. Their faces showed varying degrees of surprise and something that looked in several cases like genuine relief. At the far end of the table sat Randall, and beside him Paulette. She had dressed carefully, composed herself as if this were a routine executive meeting she was attending in an advisory capacity. When I walked in and took the seat at the head of the table, her expression moved through several things in quick succession. Confusion first. Then a harder kind of attention, the look of someone rapidly reassessing a situation they thought they understood. I let her look. Stuart activated the wall display behind me. The first image that filled the screen was the Sunset Gardens brochure, enlarged so every person in the room could read the cheerful text on the cover. Beside it appeared the power of attorney form and the property transfer document, both time-stamped from the evening of the dinner. Photographs of all 3 items laid out on a restaurant table. The room went very quiet. "Good morning," I said. "Thank you all for coming on short notice. I want to walk you through what has been happening inside this company, and I want to start with what happened to me 11 days ago." I walked them through all of it. No dramatics, no raised voice, just the facts in the order they happened. The way I would explain a job site problem to a crew foreman. I have found that the truth does not need much decoration. It just needs to be laid out clearly so people can see the shape of it. I started with the dinner, described the restaurant, the folder, the brochure, the forms with my address pre-typed. Stuart played 2 minutes of audio from the recording device I had worn that evening. Floyd's voice came through the room speakers explaining how a sale would solve my care costs. Paulette's voice explaining that the power of attorney would mean I would not have to deal with any of the paperwork myself. The room listened without a sound. Then Stuart moved to the audit findings. 4 subcontracts, Drummond Building Group, $1.4 million in work routed to Paulette's father's company over 22 months, with the family relationship undisclosed to the board in every instance. The contracts appeared on the screen one by one. Her signature was visible on 2 of them. Then the acquisition agreement she had signed and returned within 4 hours. Stuart read the relevant clause aloud, slowly so the language was clear. The acknowledgement she had made in her own handwriting on her own initiative, without reading carefully enough to understand what she was actually confirming. By the time Stuart finished, Lorraine Hatch had stopped taking notes and was just sitting with her hands flat on the table. Clifford Owens was shaking his head slowly. Beverly Crane had her arms crossed and was looking at Paulette with an expression that required no interpretation. Paulette had been very still throughout the presentation, the composed executive stillness she had walked in with. But I could see the edges of it starting to give way. Her jaw was set too tight. Her hands were no longer relaxed on the table. She was holding herself together through concentration, and concentration has a limit. Randall had not moved at all. He was looking at the table in front of him. I finished the presentation and set down the single sheet of notes I had carried to the podium. What you have seen this morning, I said, is a coordinated effort to use elder financial coercion to acquire private property connected to a company project carried out by someone who simultaneously held an undisclosed financial interest in that project through her family's contracting firm. That is not a misunderstanding. That is not a business disagreement. That is fraud. Lorraine Hatch spoke first. I move for the immediate removal of Paulette Drummond Calloway from all advisory and operational roles within this company, and for referral of the subcontracting matter to outside legal counsel for full investigation. Seconded, said Beverly Crane before the sentence was completely finished. All in favor, I said. 10 hands went up, every board member. The vote was not close because it was not a close question. That was when Paulette's composure finally went. She pushed back from the table hard enough that her chair scraped across the floor and turned heads. She stood up, and for a moment she just looked at me, and I could see her working through the full scope of what had happened. Not just today, all of it. 25 years of a man she had dismissed as irrelevant, as a nuisance, as an old contractor in worn-out boots who was not worth the seat he occupied at her dinner table. The company that paid for her house and her car and her lifestyle and her husband's title. The access road that her entire riverfront project depended on. All of it tracing back to one person she had never bothered to take seriously. You did this, she said. Her voice had lost every bit of the warmth and polish she had walked in with. You sat there at our dinners, you let us think you were nothing, and you did this. I sat there at your dinners, I said, because Randall is my son. I let you think what you chose to think because I never needed your opinion of me to know what I was worth. And I did this because you decided that the right move was to threaten an old man with a guardianship hearing to take his house. That decision had consequences. She turned to Randall. Randall, say something. Tell them. Randall looked up from the table for the first time since the presentation had started. He looked at his wife for a long moment, then he looked at me, and he did not say anything at all. 2 members of building security were already at the boardroom door. I had arranged that in advance. They were professional about it. Guided Paulette out without any further scene. Her company credentials were deactivated before the elevator reached the lobby. Floyd Drummond received a certified letter from Stewart's office that afternoon. Drummond Building Group would not be considered for any future subcontracts with Holt Construction. The full subcontracting file had been referred to outside counsel for review, with cooperation offered to any regulatory body that requested it. The meeting wrapped up in another 20 minutes. Routine items, a vote to appoint an interim oversight committee while the board evaluated next steps for company leadership, handshakes around the table. Several board members stopped to introduce themselves to me properly, some for the first time despite years of working together through intermediaries. Lorraine Hatch shook my hand at the door and said, "We're glad you're here, Gerald. We should have met a long time ago, probably," I said. Stuart and I rode the elevator down together. The lobby was quiet. Through the glass front of the building, I could see my truck parked across the street. the dent in the rear quarter panel that I had never bothered to fix, the sun hitting the windshield at an angle that made it look almost new. "How do you feel?" Stuart asked. I thought about it for a second. "Ready to go home," I said. Randall called me 17 days later. Not right away. I did not expect him to. He needed time to sit with what had happened, to separate what he had known from what he had chosen not to look at too closely. That is a process that cannot be rushed, and I was not going to rush it. I had waited 25 years for a lot of things. I could wait 3 more weeks for a phone call. When he finally did call, it was a Sunday evening. I was sitting in the front room with the radio on low and a cup of coffee that had gone mostly cold. He said he did not know where to start. I told him to start wherever felt honest. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said he had known something was off with the subcontracts for a while. Not the details, not the full picture, but enough that he should have asked harder questions, and he had not. He said he had told himself it was Paulette managing a vendor relationship and that he had trusted her judgment when he should have trusted his own instincts. He said he was sorry for that, not just for what had happened to me, but for what he had let happen inside the company he was supposed to be running. I listened to all of it then. I said, "Randall, I'm not looking for an apology. An apology is just words. What I want to know is whether you understand the difference between being influenced by someone and being responsible for the environment you allow around you." He said, "I think I'm starting to. That's enough for now," I said. We talked for almost 2 hours after that, about the company, about what came next for him professionally, about some things regarding his mother that we had both been carrying around without saying out loud. It was not an easy conversation, but it was an honest one. I had not had many of those with my son in recent years, and I had missed them more than I had admitted to myself. I'm not going to tell you that everything is fine now, because it is not. Some things broke that night at the restaurant that are going to take longer than a phone call to put back together. Randall is working through what his marriage was and what it was not. That is his process, and I'm going to let him go through it without me standing over it. I told him I was not going anywhere, that the door on Garfield Street was the same door it had always been. The Riverfront project, for what it is worth, is moving forward. Stuart connected the board with an infrastructure consultant who identified 2 alternative access road alignments that the internal team had not fully developed because they had become too fixed on my property. One of those alternatives is actually more cost-effective than the original plan. Sometimes the obstacle you're trying to get around was pointing you toward a better route the whole time. My house is still my house. I have not moved the reading chair. I want to say something to you directly before I finish. If you are the kind of man who has spent his life working hard and living modestly and keeping his business to himself, you already know that people will draw their conclusions based on what they can see. The truck you drive, the neighborhood you live in, the boots you wear to a dinner where everyone else is dressed for a magazine shoot. They will make their decisions about your value, about your relevance, about how much of a problem you represent, and they will make those decisions fast and without much information. Let them. You do not owe anyone a preview of what you're capable of. The most dangerous man in any room is not the loudest one. He is not the one with the most expensive suit or the biggest title or the firmest handshake. He is the one who already knows how this ends and is patient enough to let the other side talk themselves into a corner. You have earned your position. You have earned your knowledge. You have earned the right to sit quietly at the end of the table and watch, and to act when the moment is exactly right. Do not let anyone convince you that your age is a weakness. Do not let anyone hand you a brochure and tell you it is care when what they mean is removal. Do not sign anything under pressure. Do not make decisions in rooms where you're outnumbered, and do not ever confuse someone's confidence with their having done their homework. Because sometimes the man they think they are outmaneuvering is the one who built the whole table they are sitting at. And when it is time to remind them of that, one phone call is all it takes.